What's happening, guys? So today I actually want to take the time to talk about the new Korean producer letter. Now with the Archer class coming out in Korea, they actually released a producer letter going over basically their general thoughts on the new updates they're putting out, kind of sharing their thought process behind what they're working on for Blade and Soul. And I thought this would be really cool to kind of cover this and talk about because there's a lot of exciting things to mention. This was actually translated from Banana, and I've said in the past Banana is a really great translator, so shout out to him for always doing this for the community forever. So let's talk about these changes. First thing to talk about is the new dungeon mode. So originally we had the 4-man dungeon mode and then the 6-man dungeon mode for my OG players. Then we got the normal and hard mode dungeons, and now we're going to be getting a new system called the beginning dungeon mode. So how this is going to work is basically what's called beginner is going to make it so all the like instant wipe mechanics in some of the dungeons, like let's say the brew chamber, the very first boss, if you mess up the blood condensing thing or whatever it's called, if you mess that up you instantly just wipe. So in beginner mode, you wouldn't wipe, you would just take a lot of damage. And they mentioned the reason why they're putting in this system is basically just to make it less pressure for a new player. Let's say you never ran Brute Chamber before and you're kind of nervous about messing up like the instant wipe mechanics. You're like, oh gosh, are you gonna flame me? And so you're kind of worried about that. So what you could do is just join beginner mode and just get a feel for the dungeons. And the cool thing about it is the mechanics and the attack pattern, all that is still the same for hard mode, normal mode, and beginning mode. It's just beginning mode won't wipe you anymore. And personally, I don't really mind this mode. I feel like it's going to be great for the new players and even for like higher tier players who played the game for a while. When there's a new dungeon that comes out, they can kind of treat this mode as like a practice mode to test out the mechanics so they have an idea on what they're doing and not worry about just instantly dying if they mess up a mechanic. So I think this is a perfectly fine change, and if you obviously don't want to do it, and you don't have to, you just do your normal mode and hard mode. Next up, we have information on the Archer class. So they have this thing called accumulation. How it works is basically when you attack a target, the accumulation has a mark, and then all the damage you do during this time is stored on the target until the accumulation effect ends. Once it ends, it actually does additional damage. It kind of like explodes on the target. So it's like an accumulation, like it's like a big giant stack on the target, and then once that ends, a big explosion does additional damage. So this is kind of interesting mechanic. And they mentioned that how they did it was it's actually difficult for the archer to fill out the accumulation gauge on their own. So what happens is your party members can actually fill it up with you. So if they're able to assist with that, you're going to be doing extra damage to the target. And so it makes it that it's really useful to be with a party so they can help you stack out and do maximum DPS. Also talked about their movement and targeting. So one of the key things is the archer doesn't really have a bunch of like auto target skills. So if you play any other ranged class like the gunslinger or the forest master, they really just have mostly auto target skills. That's why there's all those memes about the gunslinger. You can just play it with your eyes closed because you just automatically lock onto the target. And with the archer class, it's actually going to be the complete opposite. Most of their skills are going to be more with your camera. So wherever you're kind of aiming with the camera, that's where it's going to target. So if the boss is in like the middle of the fight and you're looking to the far right and you press a skill, you're going to completely miss a boss with your ability. So you actually have to aim stuff and kind of focus on the fight a little bit more. And that's kind of a key thing of the archer, which will allow you to move around the map a little bit better. But you're going to have to kind of focus a little bit. Besides that, they have the combat styles. They have Dawn and Gale. So for the Dawn build, it's going to focus more on your distance. So if you're really up close, you'll have abilities that are kind of like a shotgun they mentioned, where it'll do like a ton of like upburst damage, explode in the boss's face. And then you have other ones where you're like really far away from the target and you deal a ton of damage that way. So if you're really into more like a distance type build, then you'll do the Dawn. Gale is kind of the complete opposite. It's more about kind of combos and linking skills together. Also with the Gale build, there'll be like these like light pillars around the map that you actually have to like jump to. And when you do, you actually gain additional damage, and that's kind of a key factor of the build. So personally, I'm going to probably go for the Gale build. I feel like this one's going to be a lot more interactive and fun because you're kind of jumping around the map and getting rewarded for it. And I kind of like the idea of having like a bunch of combos. I think it'll be a lot more fun for me personally, so that's the one I'm going to check out. But overall, the Archer class seems pretty damn interesting, and I'm really excited to check it out in September when it comes out for North America and Europe. The next thing they have is the balance changes. Now this one is actually really big and going to change the game by a lot. What they're going to be doing is changing how your certain skills do damage in whatever game mode you're in. So let's say you're in PvE, your damage for your skills will do different amounts than compared to if you're in like an arena match or if you're in even a battleground. So let's say you have, I don't know, like a knockdown skill and it does 300 damage in a PvE dungeon, but in battlegrounds it'll only do like 180 damage for a better balance for PvP. And the reason why they're doing this is because as of right now, it's kind of a mess in PvP, especially in like Arena with the Awakening update. It's been kind of bad for balancing, and they even acknowledge that in here. And they're talking about trying to balance it where they kind of have separate skills, do separate damage in whatever mode you're in. And I personally think this is a great idea because it's going to make it way easier for them to balance, because they can do, oh, this skill is really OP in PvP, let's nerf it a little bit. But for PvE, it's perfectly fine. Let's just keep the damage for PvE. And I think this could be a really great idea. So they're going to be trying to fix this up. And I'm really excited to see what it's going to do for the state of the game. I think maybe it can make Arena PvP more popular again, because as of right now, I feel like Arena PvP is quite dead. So I'm really excited for these changes. I think these are really awesome. The last thing to talk about is the ancient legendary equipment. So right now we have legendary items. They talked about they wanted to add something a little bit above that tier, kind of to make the difference between like a max game player compared to someone who's kind of like medium geared. So what they're going to be doing is having these different stats. So let's say you have the Thornbreaker weapon, which is a new weapon above Grand Celestial. If you have that, you can upgrade it to Ancient Legendary State, and with that you have different stats. You can go from 1 to 20. So every time you go, let's say you're at 1, you have AP, critical, all that, and then you upgrade to +2, you gain additional AP, critical, all that, all the way to +20. And this is kind of like an enchantment system, because here's the problem. It's RNG, so if you upgrade different stats higher and higher, there is a chance you can actually fail. There's not like a guaranteed upgrade. So it's very similar to something like Black Desert Online, where you have like your different tiers of upgrading, and every time you upgrade you actually have a chance of failing. So it's going to have that type of system in Blade and Soul, and it's going to be really for like the end game players, like totally maxed out gear. Just to be brutally honest, I'm really not a fan of RNG upgrades at all. For MMORPGs, I do think RNG is necessary, and I think it's great in certain cases, but for upgrading, I feel like it's 100% not necessary. It's not needed for upgrading. I think it's a terrible design, and I really don't see how anyone could be behind this and say, yeah, RNG upgrades, that sounds like a great idea. Like, imagine you're trying to upgrade your ancient legendary Thornbreaker weapon, and you fail like 10 times in a row, and then Bob over here, he tries 2 times and gets the upgrade. I feel like that's just a terrible design of just being total luck. And I feel like that's a really big reason why people hate Black Desert Online. And I have friends who've played like 10,000 hours of that game, like insane amount, like years and years of playing Black Desert. And even they'll say, man, I love this game, but the RNG upgrades is just terrible. I wish they could change that. And ironic enough, I would always be like, oh, I'm playing Blade and Soul. They don't have those dumb RNG upgrades, and now they're putting them in. And I know some people will argue, they'll be like, hey, Jarg, it doesn't really matter because 99% of the player base is not going to get to ancient legendary equipment. It's like insanely expensive. It's for the max endgame players. Most people won't be able to get to that stage anyways. And I do agree with that. I won't be able to get there, and most people won't. My thing is, it just kind of scares me. Like, the idea of them introducing this in is just kind of scary, that they could do this with more equipment in the future. And who knows, maybe they won't introduce the RNG system to North America and Europe. I know like Blade and Soul China, for example, like every equipment they upgrade has RNG, but for North America and Europe, we don't have any RNG right now for equipment upgrades. So maybe they won't do that. Maybe they'll just introduce the system and won't have the RNG attached to it. We don't really know yet. It's too early to tell. But in general, I'm not really a big fan of this. I'm not really hyped for this system. They also mentioned that with the beginner mode for dungeons, they're trying to do something like that for raiding, make maybe like a beginner mode for raiding for 12-man players. They talked about, rather than having a difficulty to tackle with 12 players, they want to look to create an enjoyable experience for 12 players. So maybe make it really super easy. I'm pretty sure the translation got really wrong here. I don't really know, but yeah, I guess they're just trying to make it easier for people to do raids. I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see on that one. But really, besides that, they do mention Unreal Engine 4, and they said, guess what? They're still working on it. So we're gonna have to wait, still be patient. I know everyone's really dying for it. I know everyone wanted Unreal Engine 4 with the Archer class, but doesn't really seem like it's gonna happen for North America and Europe. So I'm going to assume they're probably going to push it for December, because they like to do like really big updates in December. I think that'd be a really great update to put out. Maybe even push it to January or February of 2020. Sounds really crazy to even say that year. That sounds so futuristic. But yeah, I'm not really going to try and rush them, because we've already waited so long for this Unreal Engine 4. And I'm going to just wait and be patient. Hopefully it really fixes the optimization issues and the FPS drops and everything that's been plaguing this game forever. But yeah, that's really the video for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It is kind of longer than my other videos, but I had a lot of fun making this and covering this Korean producer letter. If you made it this far, then I'm going to assume that you probably liked the video. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't. I'm trying to reach that 3,000 subscribers because I'm going to do some type of like giveaway or 3,000 sub like special for you guys. It's going to be a really fun time. So make sure you sub, like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next video real soon. I'm out.